Hey guys, just a quick word about electronics and what I'm doing in this ship. It doesn't have a lot of lighting. It has the engines, of course, are the main focal point, and I wanted to do something else because the only other lighting on the ship besides the engines is the cockpit, and I think you could put a couple of LEDs in there and call it a day. But since, there's nothing else really going on in the ship besides maybe one or two red lights on the outside, I thought I was going to do something for the cockpit just to give it something interesting. So this is a random group of LEDs. This is 5 or 6 LEDs. They're 3mm LEDs, and I have assorted colors, as you can see. There are 2 white, green, amber, red, and blue, and they're blinking at different intervals. And the way I did that was I hooked it up to a little Arduino board that I had programmed with blinking. It's just a very, very basic sketch that I got online for blinking lights. So certain pins just blink at certain rates, and I hooked up the LEDs to that. And this is the actual cockpit, and I had painted it and did a little bit of detailing on it, but I'm going to do a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is put fiber optic in the cockpit at different locations and run the fiber to these random blinking lights. So what you're going to end up with is a bunch of blinking lights at different intervals, which sort of would look like something in a cockpit where there's, flashing stuff going on. And the fiber is actually going to run through the ship, and this is the section that sits behind the bridge, and I want to put it in here, the board, so I'm just going to fit everything into that little piece of pipe. So the board's going to go in there. I'm going to put all the LEDs in there, and I'll run the fiber into that, and then put the whole thing into this right here. So there's plenty of room in this thing, and I just wanted to put it in this tube so it would be easy to get in to that section. So it should look cool when it's all put together, and the bridge should be, even though there's a small kind of viewing area that you look into, you should see a lot going on in there. So that should be pretty cool. And if it's too busy, there's too much going on, I'll just change it so I can, I'll test it out and see how it goes. So, fun with circuit boards and LEDs. They can add a lot to your model. Alright, so I got the engines all done. A lot of work, as I expected. I just did one at a time. All of my homemade parts are actually on. So they're all on the top. Made parts are the bottom, even though you'll probably never see them. I haven't put them on yet. So I have 11 more to put on the bottom. Other than that, I'm liking how everything looks. I've been filling in seams and patching everything. So I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to put the lights in the engines, and I just wanted to show that because he does give you, with the kit, a little insert. I painted it black, and you're not going to be able to see the detail. It's a little disc that I believe is supposed to go behind the cap so you can see some detail in there if you're not lighting it. But I am lighting it. So what I did was I drilled a hole in the cap, and I used a LED holder, and that's going in there. So the LED is going to come out the back, and this is going to fit on the cap, so I can attach that and then attach the cap to the back of the engine. So that should look pretty good. Here it is lit up. I didn't diffuse this yet. I wanted to see how it looked first, but it's too much of a spot, so I'm gonna diffuse the bulb with some sandpaper so it spreads the light evenly. But I think it's gonna look really good. I'm gonna also detail this piece so there's more silver on it. I might just spray the whole thing chrome and then detail it with some soot. So I'll get a little bit of light deflection in there, and then maybe paint the inside of these caps chrome so there's some light bouncing around in whatever little spot there is that would make it a little more attractive lighting. So that's what I'm doing for the lighting, and I should have that all done for the next part that I'm going to show. And that's pretty much it that I have for now. And just cleaning up the rest of the parts and fitting everything else together as I was waiting for the stuff to like dry and stuff. So that's going. But I wanted to show the finished engine, and I wanted to show the lighting. So that's my solution. Oh, also to drill this hole, what I did was I drilled a pilot hole with a drill bit. I centered a punch, put a mark in the center of the piece, and then I drilled a hole in there about 1/8 of an inch hole. And then from that point on, I used a step bit, which works great because you can go as, you know, the depth that you want, the width that you want, and it makes a clean circle, and it goes through resin really, really easily. So it will make a mess, but it will go through resin to whatever size that you want. So I sized it so this LED holder would fit in that hole without any gap around the end or the edges or anything. So it's a nice clean fit. And these things, these LED holders, they stay on with there's a washer and a nut that goes on there. And I'm going to glue that when it's tight. So that's not going to go anywhere. And then the LED itself, I'm going to attach to the back with epoxy. So there's no way anything's going to move. But that's how I did the hole, just in case you're wondering how I got such a decent, even hole in there. And I didn't use a regular drill bit, I used a step bit. So I'm still going on my engines section. I have most of it done. And I'll show you the lights. I think they came out pretty good. They're sort of an orangish yellow. And I like the 10mm LEDs. I like the way they look. They don't put out that much light. That's 9 volts going through there. I'm probably going to keep it at 9 volts. Could go to 12, but I think 9 is plenty. And I have my parts, my supplemental parts on, and I kind of cut those so they meld into these other pipes, which I think looks pretty good. I of course did some detailing, as you can see the detail painting on here. There's some markings on this ship that I had followed a picture of the filming model that was online. This is insignia red, which I think is pretty close. The last red I used was too dark. This is typically what I use for Rebel Alliance ships. It seems to be the color. And I did some weathering on this thing. It's just a lot easier to do this now because not weathering. I did some paint chipping. I'm not going to weather it until the whole ship is together, so I don't have like uneven weathering. But it's just a lot easier to do all this stuff now because the ship is big and it's heavy, and when you get the other section put on here, it would be really hard to do that painting. So I did pretty much all the detail painting I think it's almost all done. So yeah, it looks cool. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it looks good. All the engines look good. The caps went on pretty easily. I had one LED go out on me. I test them, before I glue them in. So everything was fine, of course. And then I put them all together, and then one of them was out. So I had to take one of them off and replace it. That's flickering because of the rig system I have going on here. Yeah, so one went out. I bought extras, so I had an extra put in. I put an extra in there, and all is good. So there's just enough silver in there where it's getting a reflection when you look at the engine sideways, and there is some silver inside. Let me see if I can show you that. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it, but inside there, where the engine inserts are that I showed before, I had painted those silver, and I hit them with a black airbrush, so they're a little covered, and then I put the bulb in. So they look a little beat up, but they will reflect a little light, so I think it looks pretty good. And I haven't put any soot on this engine part yet. I'll do that when the ship's all together and I'm doing all the final weathering on it. So I think all this is pretty much done. I did a lot of touch-up work on some of the bubbles that were in some of the pieces of resin. I used I think I used Mr. Surfacer on that, which this stuff goes a long way. You get it from Japan. It's actually called Mr. Dissolved Putty. And it's a liquid putty. And I don't know if you've used this stuff before, but it's pretty thick. And there's a lot in here, because you're just putting a paintbrush in there and applying it with a toothpick or a paintbrush to fill in where you really don't want to use other putty. And this stuff is sandable, and it's really, really, really good. I love this stuff. And I use that to drip in to some of the parts that had bubbles in there where the resin didn't look right. I used it here and there. So it came in really handy. And all the seams for the engine caps are all cleaned up. So yeah, it's looking good. I'll come back when I have more of the fuselage put together, and I'm working on that next. So I'll see you next time.